Living in the Past is a Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth, and Everlook Broadcasting production. This is Living in the Past, your Everlook Broadcasting Company weekly show about all things Turtle, Mysteries of Azeroth. Today is Friday, October 20th, 2023, and I'm Dan, your host for the next hour. Good evening. On tonight's broadcast, we'll be talking about the new patch notes for 17.1 that have started coming together, my thoughts on Karazhan, and the different quest lines, loot, and a singular gripe I have with it, as well as appreciating the return of Halloween for the next week and a half or so. Starting out here, let's actually take a look at those brand new patch notes. So 1.17.1 is starting to come together. It is a work in progress. Not everything has been included in it yet, but we have seen a solid preview of the different things we're going to get with it. So before I dig into this in full, I would invite you all to open up the forums, at least after I'm done, and check this out for yourself. Again, the 1.17.1 patch notes are marked as a work in progress. Torta posted up the patch notes for them. We'll start with just general changes. The Goblin customization is getting updated. New haircuts, new visuals, a few other things. There have been problems with different weapon animations and a few glitches with that. They're going to be fixing that stuff. That's fun and all. It's good to see. What I'm really excited for, though, is two things. And the first is these new starting zones for both goblins and high elves. High elves are getting these, at least from the screenshots, these nice highlands kind of tucked up in the hills, as well as a much more expanded city that is up and available for them. Very, very excited for that and what's going on with that. Alathalas obviously has been, for those of us who play Alliance at least, a godsend when it comes to, I need to get to the opposite side of the continent. All of a sudden, I can just portal up from Stormwind. Happy days. But it's more than that, and it's becoming a lot more than that. So I'm very excited to see the High Elves actually have more of their own kind of homeland, a much more like built-out city here. The Autumn Isle looks gorgeous in particular. I think that's what it's being called. That one screenshot of it on the forums, it does look incredible. I'm very excited for that. Goblins are also getting a new starting island. I don't know a ton about this. There was only one screenshot posted up on the forums about this, but it sounds like you're gonna have to build your way up from the ground level, so to speak. You start out as the lowliest of goblin worker, and you have to fight your way up through the chain of command, or rather the chain of commerce. So we'll see exactly what's going on with that. But again, I'm excited for this kind of stuff. I would love to see more. From the one screenshot they posted on the forums, it definitely looks like this is a very, this island is here to be industrialized. We are taking the resources and we are taking them as fast as possible. It looks very barren, trees stripped and whatnot. I'm very excited for that. So who knows what that is going to look like in full. I can't wait to see more screenshots of that. The other thing that's coming, and this is kind of a big one, so we're going to take a little more time with this, is itemization changes. The first one that we saw was the actual alternative tier set. I don't know why I said that weird. Alternative tier sets. And how this works is there are going to be alternative tier sets for tiers 1, 2, 2.5, and 3. And that also, according to this post on the forums, also includes tier 3 rings. And essentially what this means is these tier sets are going to have different versions of them that you can activate or turn in some way. I'm not exactly sure how the conversion is going to work yet, but certainly as soon as that's done and set, Turtle is going to tell us exactly what's going on. So here are the different specializations that are getting alternative tier set counterparts. For the mages, Arcane and Fire and Frost are going to be getting some more specific tier sets. For priests, Shadow, tiers 1, 2, and 3. And then 2.5 is going to get a healing alternative. And then 2.5 is also getting a smite spec version. In talking with a few other priests, I play a Shadow priest normally. In talking with a few other priests, while the utility for smite spec isn't there when you compare it to Shadow, the damage is there. The damage is very much there. And having Holy Nova as an option is very useful. So smite spec is a very legitimate thing, if you're willing to go down that path. But apparently, of course, you lose a lot of group utility and cohesion with that. As with Shadow, you're bringing in a lot of mana and health into your party. So having a couple Shadow priests in your raid to keep the casters topped off in those groups, very, 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 very useful. You want that. That's good. Smite spec doesn't get that. But there is going to be a 2.5 smite spec tier alternative. I'm very interested in seeing. For warriors, obviously the big one. All warrior tiers are built for tanks. So all warrior tiers 1, 2, 2.5, and 3, are all getting arms and fury versions. I'm going to assume that the arms versions are going to be somewhat, maybe PvP related, unless they're really trying to push to make arms a legitimate DPS spec as well, which I'm interested in seeing if they're actually trying to do. That would be fun to explore a bit more. But obviously, Fury getting this is going to be incredible. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but there are some really nasty gaps in gear that this is fixing big time. For Warlocks, Destruction. Destruction is actually getting its own alternative tier sets. They're not doing Demonology at all, and I have my own theories as to why, but I don't know enough about Warlocks to actually speak on that intelligently, so I'm going to hold off for right now. But Destruction for Warlocks is getting its own separate tier sets. For Druids, Feral Combat, Cat and Bear, Balance, and Restoration is getting a 2.5 alternative as well. I believe Feral Combat and Balance are getting alternatives for 1, 2, and 3, maybe? It doesn't say specifically on this post which ones are getting which, but I'm going to assume that Balance and Feral Combat are getting its own versions of all of those as well. Shamans, because much like Warriors and the fact that all tiers for Warriors are prot related, for Shamans, pretty much all the tiers are or Restoration related. So, all Shamans are getting Enhancement and Elemental tier alternatives. And for Paladins, Retribution and Protection are getting alternatives for most of these sets. I believe 1, 2, and 3. And then Holy is getting a 2.5 alternative, very similar to Shadow Priests. They also have a disclaimer on this. Only the Holy tier set is for 2.5. The rest of the specializations will get an armor set for all tier sets. Okay, so Retribution and Protection are going to get a lot of different options there. And that's good to see. Because as I mentioned earlier, there's some pretty nasty, at least in the vanilla. So I'm speaking specifically on the vanilla, not the turtle gear availability. There are some very nasty gaps in gear availability for a lot of these specs. For example, Feral Combat, especially if you want to do Feral DPS, you have some nasty gear gaps that you simply cannot fill, or there were no options in the first place to make you viable. I'm sure many Ferals will remember the crowd pummeler nonsense that they had to do back in the day. That stuff's not fun. We hate that. Turtle has already done so much to fix that kind of thing. Another nasty gap for myself and our Shadow Priest brethren: finding a decent hat. So here's the big thing about Shadow Priest: you can't use crit. The only spell that you have, well, technically the only two spells you have that can crit: Mind Blast and your little God, I'm forgetting the name of it because I barely use it. I use it to tag, and that's it. But the Mind Spike, I think it's called Mind Spike. But Shadow Word Pain, which is pretty much your primary source of damage. If you're a good Shadow Priest, your uptime on Shadow Word Pain should be 100%. And Mind Flay cannot crit. So the amount of hats you have available to you, very, very limited, because a Shadow Priest should not roll on Mission Dares. The hat off of Nefarian. Nefarian. My brain was like, is it Neltharion or Nefarian? No, it's Nefarian. Neltharion is Deathwing. We're talking about Blackwing here. My lore brain got confused with itself for a minute. But yeah, so the Shadow Priests, we really shouldn't roll on Mission Dares, which means there isn't a great hat for us anywhere. So being able to convert a tier 2 headpiece into something that allows us to do shadow damage is going to help immensely. I'm raiding Blackwing Lair, Emerald Sanctum, and Karazhan on a regular basis right now, and I'm still using the blue hat out of ZG. Just because I haven't found anything better that I should roll on regularly. It's very difficult to find gear for certain pieces. Legs as well for Shadow Priests. I'm still using my Bloodvine, but I'm in Blackwing Lair every single week. It feels very odd. Obviously, I could pick up Leggings of the Black Blizzard out of AQ20, but again, there's crit on those. And mages and warlocks, especially Destrolocks, should really have that before me. I should not take those over a multiple other classes. Now, I will say, off Kazakh, there are shadow legs, like legs that have 63 shadow damage on them and very little else, which would be stellar if I could get a world boss kill, which I don't have the time to sit around on a Discord and wait for the boss to be up. So that's not going to happen. That's simply not going to happen. So again, these alternative tier sets are going to do so much good. So much good for us. In addition, there are reworks coming of other sets, and I'm not going to take the time to go through each of these in great detail because I haven't read through these in detail myself. This is more new information that I haven't peeled through yet. But there are going to be reworks on the tier 0.5 sets. There are going to be reworks and some pretty big reworks on the AQ20 sets. I know in particular, there's actually a bit of a damage boost coming to the warrior weapon off of the AQ20 set. I haven't done the math on it yet as to how much damage of an increased damage it is, but just looking at it the other night, I was like, wait a second, that's actually swinging a little bit harder. So I'm curious as to how much damage how much of a damage increase it actually is. The Legacy Tier 1 and Tier 2 buffs for mages. The Legacy Rogue Tier 2 buffs. The Hateforge armor set. You almost never see the Hateforge armor set. And then there's going to be smaller crafted set changes. So they mentioned the steel armor set and other miscellaneous changes to that. There is a separate itemization post going into much greater detail on this. Much greater detail. And I would encourage everyone to look through these. It is a separate post in the itemization section of the forums. Dragonovi did a good job of documenting all of this stuff that they're doing so far. One change, and I'm trying to find it here real quick, that a couple of us were talking about the other night, actually, was the adjustment to armor penetration. According to this post, armor penetration stat value has been doubled from 0.2 to 0.4. Now, what this means, essentially, is this has to do with stat weighting on items. So the amount of armor penetration you're going to see from items is actually going to be halved because of this. Each point of armor penetration is going to take up more stat value for each item. And they go through the entire list. And I mean the entire list of all of these. Another major change that they mentioned on this post that I was discussing with some guildmates the other night was the change to the sword out of Blackwing Lair that has sword skill on it. It's being adjusted from 4 weapon skill to 5 weapon skill. Now, this may not seem like a huge change, but with how weapon skill works, this now dramatically changes the loot priorities for who actually gets this sword and who can take advantage of it. Our raid leader specifically used the term unskilled for who should and shouldn't be receiving something like this. So if you want more information on this, strongly encourage all of you, please check out the different forum posts on all of this. There's a lot of changes already, and there's more coming. There are more changes coming. There are many classes, well, not many, but some classes that haven't had any changes posted to yet. Hunter and Shaman and Druid are all yet to be posted up, so there's more on the way. Stay up to date, stay informed, and make sure you read through all this stuff in full. We don't know exactly when 1.17.1 is going to be happening, but certainly I'm so excited for this. And there's a big reason why, and I know this segment's going a little long, but I wanted to take the time on this. There is a beauty to the amount of gear and the amount of items available on Turtle. For so long, we have known every item, the stats on every item that drops in Vanilla WoW. Sure, it's been adjusted and changed slightly over the couple decades, but overall it really hasn't changed ever. Suddenly, we on Turtle are getting to experience an age of we don't know every single item off the top of our heads now. And this kind of goes to the concept of the meta. And not meta as in what is... trying to word this properly. This is the meta in the concept of like a League of Legends meta. What is the current way that the community at large processes this information? We're suddenly reaching a point where the meta isn't solid. We have all these new items, all these stat changes, and all these other options that are coming into play on the server that allows us to have more creativity and fluidity with how we gear our characters. It's no longer about what gear we have and making sure we have the exact right items. It's making sure we have the correct stats, which technically has always been the case, but in this situation, and in the situation for Vanilla WoW in general, it's always been so like set in stone for each spec, and we're reaching a point where it can't, well, it's not like it can't be set in stone, but it's going to take a very long time for us to document, process, and agree, even in a kind of ethereal, okay, the community just has a good idea of its sense, of where the meta needs to be and what the best options are. And that's beautiful. That's so incredible with how wonderful that is. We get to explore and understand and learn new things. And it's just, we haven't had that, at least in the Classic community, for a very long time. So hopefully you all look up the stat changes, look up the new things happening in patch 17.1, and realize that this is a really beautiful time to be a part of Turtle and what's growing and developing here. And hopefully you all start making some choices for yourselves. Start exploring what gear options there are out there. With the additional weapon skill changes, more items having it, to be specific. There's so much now, and it's really wonderful. I cannot wait to see what happens with this patch and the gaps that get filled because of it. It's going to be stellar. With that being said, though, it's time for our first break. In the archives of old media and memes, few compare to the legendary nonsense that's come out of Dungeons and Dragons. A few personal favorites of mine remain the gazebo and go for the eyes boo. It's not all fun and games, however, as the dead Alewives Watchtower warns us, as they give us a look into the satanic and occult dealings of a small group of D&D adventurers. We now play the segment in full, but I warn you all, it's not for the faint of heart and those lacking in Mountain Dew. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. First off, let me apologize for anyone who was disturbed by what the Dead Alewives Watchtower presented in that first piece, but it's very important we watch out for future generations. Following that up was a piece from 2005 called I Can Be Your Healer Baby by Palladius of Skullcrusher US, a song that reminds us that us priests should stay out of shadow form when the heals need to fly. Let's get right back into it here for Living in the Past. Let's talk about the new Karazhan. Well, maybe not the new, because it's not like we haven't seen Karazhan many times over in many different formats. The Karazhan crypts were a stellar use of both old and new assets to create something very memorable. Karazhan, though, it's something that's burned into many of us classic players' brains. Karazhan was obviously the first instance ever back in Burning Crusade, and getting to see a new take on it like we see now is absolutely stellar. I cannot say enough good things about the new Karazhan, from the opening to the fact that you can take multiple different paths through it, to the boss design. Getting to an issue on Moreau's here later, obviously, but the fact that things aren't a super heavy lift, but they're very well adjusted to the gear level of, okay, we've done Molten Core a few times, let's get into this as well. Feels very right. It feels very right. Unfortunately, our group hasn't really struggled with it. We're mostly BWL and AQ40 geared. I'm strictly BWL geared, but you get the idea. We're all overtuned for it, but from what I understand, with groups going into it at gear level, it's incredibly well balanced. Incredibly well balanced. If you're just starting to get that MC gear, you want a decent challenge, but also a fun hour-long raid, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect for you. And the quest lines going into it not only indicate, okay, something else is going on here, and you have a lot of loose ends that are going on, but also they really tease, okay, but there's something more happening here. The quest line for the key to Upper Karazhan that you have to go through. If you haven't done it yet, please take the time with your raid group to go through everything you need to do for it. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. It's expensive. It's very expensive. Very similar to the the other quest lines that are associated with Karazhan, but it's a ton of fun. It's worth your time, big time. I have had so much joy getting in and getting to see the place and seeing how other groups actually run it. The first night it was open, I ran it with my regular group. I wasn't able to run it with my regular group the actual first full week it was open, so I ended up running it with a pug, and the way that they actually approached it was very different. Little slower, but cleared a lot more trash, and overall was actually a little more lucrative if it weren't for a couple of wipes in there at the time. The trash obviously drops these arcane little orbs that they do sell pretty well. They do sell pretty well, and you need quite a few of them for one of the quests outside. And then there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of mystery around Karazhan. I mentioned with the quest lines and having to figure things out. There's the second in the pillows quest line. You have to talk to a dude in there, and then you have to go find pillows in the basement somewhere. The quest that follows that one up just gives you a riddle to solve. And I'm not even going to say what the answer is. I'm not going to spoil anything. That gives you a riddle, and I love it. I am a huge I love puzzles. I love problems. I'm a big problem solver. The Myst games were huge for me growing up. And in incorporating more of those mysteries and more of those, okay, we have to go around the world and figure this out. It's something that Warcraft has tried a bit in the past, never really has done well, though. I will specifically reference the it's either Cataclysm item, the mystery box of Yogg Saron out of archaeology. There it is. That stuff, it's fun, it's okay, but it was very half-hearted, a very half-hearted effort. So seeing more mystery and more like, okay, I actually have to figure out what I'm doing. I have to read the quest text. And half of you at World Chat right now are being like, I don't like reading quest text. Why would you want to make us read quest text? We want to get this stuff done. I disagree with you. I disagree. I love quests that make you pay attention to what you're doing. And stuff like this just feels incredible. Like I was saying earlier, with not necessarily knowing what the hard set meta is for gear, not necessarily understanding where quests go and what they do or what you're supposed to do with them, encourages you to do more of them just to make sure you get them done, just to find out what it is. That's a joy. That is something that is pure and happy and brings my brain so much serotonin. So just quick thank you to the devs for making Karazhan so incredibly well and designing all these extra quest lines for it. It's been a joy. Obviously, with the issues with Morose, that's not fun. That's been really unfortunate. Some folks have lost out on loot because of Morose and how he hasn't been functioning 100% of the time. My group got hit with that the other week, which that's unfortunate. That never feels good. And the devs don't want to see that either. They want this stuff to work. But I know for a fact that the devs are hard at work trying to fix those problems with Morose, and they're not gonna let it lie. They're not going to just let it continue to happen. So they're working on fixing that, and it's never a good idea to be angry at the devs just because of that. Even if you miss out on loot, which that blows, that hurts big time. Don't be angry at the devs. They are working on fixing this. Fear not, it is happening. Now, one thing I will complain about, and I mentioned I had one complaint about Karazhan, to just highlight where my brain is at. I'm a big stickler for consistency in the universe. That's my lore perspectives are very much about make the universe consistent. I have one complaint. You cannot skin the Worgen in Karazhan. I don't know why, because you can skin the Worgen everywhere else, but you can't skin the Worgen in Karazhan. Why? Let me skin them. It bugs me. It bugs me because you can skin the Worgen everywhere else, but not Karazhan. Why not? I want to skin them, please. I like skinning things. It's good money. Let me skin them. Complaint for another time, maybe. But that's my one complaint. That's my one complaint about Karazhan so far. So, hey, you know what? Great job. I'm excited to get back in there every week. We're going in tonight. I'm a little excited for tonight because I just passed 550 sitting shadow power on my priest. So not only am I excited to probably die repeatedly, but I'm also excited to see big numbers. And whether it's on my Fury Warrior or my Shadow Priest, no, I love those big numbers. Give me those big numbers. That always feels really nice. Before I close out this segment as well, I just want to give a really special thank you to the folks that I am going in to Karazhan with tonight. The wonderful teammates I have over in Pugonomics. Throughout the last few months, they've been incredibly supportive of me as I've had to dedicate more and more of my time and resources to Everlook, and especially this broadcast. I could not have better folks that I've had stick by me throughout this summer and fall. Speaking of folks that have stuck with the WoW community from the earliest days of parodies and musical covers, Silver Litomi is one that's done some truly incredible work. Our next break features a pair of her songs that she's written. I'm Still Standing, a cover of Elton John's I'm Still Standing, and LFM, an original song of hers. If you enjoy these pieces, I'd encourage you to find her work over on YouTube. Just search for Silver, Letomi. The musical tracks for this episode have been removed due to YouTube copyright. To listen to the full episodes with music, tune in to Everlook Broadcasting every Friday with the in-game radio widget. Silver Litomi is just one of the many skilled artists I plan on highlighting on this broadcast, and I hope you end up looking up some of her other music when you have time. This certainly isn't the last time we'll spotlight some of her work here on Living in the Past. Hollow's End is upon us once again, and while there's many fantastic holidays to celebrate throughout the World of Warcraft year, this one in particular always feels just a bit special. There's few things that are better than the haunted vibes and trick-or-treating you can do across Azeroth, but be careful for those troublemakers with those ridiculous wands turning everyone into all sorts of beasts and ghosts. If you haven't already, make sure you're making your way around the world and trick-or-treating at every innkeeper you run across. You can do it every hour, and it's always exciting to see if you get tricked or treated. Speaking of treated, just earlier this month, the 5-year anniversary of Turtle occurred. Hopefully, between getting your raid lockouts in and exploring Gilneas and Hyjal, you popped open your 5-year anniversary gift. That stained shirt in particular will be a prized possession forever. In addition, Turtle just concluded another half-off special on the Turtle shop. I know quite a few folks who took advantage of that to up their bag count, something I really need to consider doing for my Shadow Priest sometime, here in the very near future. Fear not if you missed out, though. I'm confident that this isn't the last time we see a special like this. And there's never a bad time to pick up a bank, auction house, or repair bot companion. Before we close up shop here on Living in the Past, one question we've gotten quite a bit here at Everlook Broadcasting is how folks can participate in our little radio effort. We're looking right now at how we can more effectively open a line of communication for everyone to use with us, both for folks looking to get on the air, as well as to submit things such as guild recruitment requests, raid notifications, and other public announcements. We feel this is a huge value add to what we do here, making Everlook a more integrated and vital part of the turtle community. I believe Bolton is on the job on that, but he'll throw something at me from one of the other studios if I'm wrong. Speaking of wrong, a quick correction and apology from last week as I completely mangled Rograg's name in my thank yous. He does incredible work and deserves having his name properly pronounced, amongst other things. Thank you for taking the time to join me today. Our nostalgia continues even though today's broadcast is at an end, and I hope you enjoyed the show here today. A huge thank you to the Turtle developers, moderators, staff, and volunteers. Without the entire team's hard work and dedication, we wouldn't have this station or this server group. An additional thank you to the audio engineers and creators here for the use of their soundtracks they've created, which we use for segment transitions and intro audio. If you'd like to find out more about what I do, I invite you to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/TheDanNation and my series Ancient Lore, a recapture of the spirit of my original podcast, The Ancient of Lore. Until next Friday, let's all keep living in the past.